Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. All right, welcome Brewer fans to Brew Crew Review Podcast. This is going to be our season wrap episode. Joining me tonight is Scott and Vince. How's it going, guys? Hey, Craig. Hey, Scotty. How are you guys?
Not bad, guys. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to re-catch up a little bit. I know it's been a rough ending here for the Brewers, but good to catch up with you guys again. Hey, is Chad on the call here with us?
Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us this season. He was with us in spirit, though, so but anyway, yeah, I'm sure he'll be all over the off season and with us every step of the way.
What's funny is I literally have not heard from him at all since the Brewers were eliminated in the postseason. So I'm actually a little concerned. I don't know if we have any whereabout updates on him, but he hasn't responded to numerous text messages in our group text thread, and I've seen nothing from him whatsoever, so I don't know if he's actually okay, just so you guys know.
I would be slightly concerned that if his last meal was a free George Webb's burger, but because the last image I've seen of him was holding a free George Webb's burger. But
I mean, if you're going to go, maybe that if you got to go, that's not the most awful way, but,
True. I'll hope that I'm sure Scott's checking the missing persons or possibly obituaries. I don't know. I can hear him typing, so as we speak. But Scott, when was your last interaction with good friend Chad?
It's definitely been a while. I think we're all, as Brewers fans, we're kind of taking, this a little bit hard, but I think Chad might be taking it hardest of all. So that's, what can you do?
I'm sure he would, if he were to chime in, he would chime in something like the fact that the Chicago Bears are in first place makes them still live for another day or something like that. So I'm sure he's fine.
I picture him at home in a darkened room, slowly playing, sitting at a grand piano, playing Build Me Up Buttercup, but like a really slow, melancholy version.
That'd be awesome.
I like that. I like that, Scott. That's great.
Yeah, just like they got us again. Built us up.
So, I don't know, which one you guys want to start off with? I guess going back, we were fortunate enough to bring our fans back to a new age of podcasting here at the beginning of this 2018 Brewers season, and it turned out to be a pretty successful one overall, and I think it definitely exceeded our expectations in a lot of ways, as much as we didn't like the ending. But with that being said, I don't know if any of you guys want to start with doing like your synopsis or your recap on the season overall, and then maybe after that we can talk a little bit about the specifics of the postseason and stuff like that. But overall, who wants to do kind of their synopsis? And if you guys, I would do it if you guys didn't want to go first, but kind of your overall synopsis of the first season.
I'll jump on that really quick here. I think, overall, Craig, like you just said, we exceeded expectations this year. I don't think that any of the three of us, and I don't think any of the national prognosticators had picked the Brewers to win the division or be in the playoffs at all, hardly, and certainly didn't pick the team to actually exceed the franchise win total. And the loss to the Dodgers was disappointing. I think we could have won at least another one or two of those games, which obviously would have put us in the World Series against a very tough Red Sox team. But, one thing that I'm hoping is different about this season compared to other seasons is two things. Number one, I think that the team is still on the upswing, which is really exciting. I think that this team is fallen into this window of contention a season sooner maybe than most people thought, which means that is just another opportunity. So I really think that with Yelich under team control and Kane under team control and a good core of young guys, that we really have the chance to be good for another few seasons. And the other second point is that maybe, just maybe, this is the year that sort of eliminated what I would like to call a loser's mindset from the Brewers as an organization. And I know we've had winning teams in the past. I know we've had postseason teams in the past, but it seems like this team was just not content to be average or to fit into what the experts believe they would do. And I'm going to attribute a lot of that to the leadership abilities of Kane and Yelich, and that extends all the way to the top with David Stearns and then Craig Counsell on the field as well. So I'm hopeful that this is just the beginning for the Brewers and not the end.
Excellent wrap-up and synopsis, Vince. I agree pretty much wholeheartedly with what you're saying there. In fact, right after the Brewers Game 7 NLCS loss, I know that in order to keep our spirits up a little bit, I did send everyone a text saying, you know what, this is not the end, this is the beginning. And I agree with your thoughts on that. If you look back at 2008, which was a great year for the Brew Review, obviously we made the playoffs for the first time in 26 years. That was our only year with CC Sabathia, and we basically knew he was a rental, so that was kind of the window that was open for us. Not that we couldn't have made it again the next year, but to have him for a playoff run, and that was our one shot with him, and so that did definitely feel like an end of that chapter, so to speak. And 2011, similarly in my mind, player of Prince Fielder's caliber. It was his last year before being a free agent, and having him and Braun together, two almost franchise level players in the middle of our lineup, I felt that was another closing of a chapter, and the Brewers didn't make it all the way to Game 6 of the NLCS that year, but I really felt that we had a strong enough team to go to the World Series that year. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out, so it did feel like an ending. This doesn't, like Vince is saying, this feels different. It feels like this is the start of something. And obviously, a year ago, if you look back a full calendar year ago, the start of last offseason, Kane and Yelich weren't even a Brewer yet. And the Brewers had to finish a pretty successful 2017 season where kind of a ragtag team of players, rose up and really started to play well when we missed the playoffs just by one game. And that was before those guys were even on a team. Looking back even now, I'm like, how did we do that? I mean, I think something really is going to be a common denominator here, and I think that's the combination of our GM, David Stearns, and I think even more importantly, our manager, Craig Counsell, I think is a real good one, and I think that gives me huge hope that the Brewers are going to be perennial contenders going forward, because I think Counsell has this ability to get the best out of the players and that play for him. But anyway, I'll give a little bit more in-depth detail. But Scott, I don't know if you want to chime in at all on kind of your overall take of the season from your perspective.
Yeah, I guess I could probably do that, I suppose. I mean, I guess, we look at what we had all predicted at the beginning of the year, and I think that we had all said somewhere in the kind of upper 80s for wins, mid to upper 80s, and we exceeded all those expectations. If you would have said, hey, at the beginning of the year, you would say, hey, you know what, you guys are going to go through a fair amount of injuries, and you're going to get one game from the World Series. Be like, wow, that's great job, everybody. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel like that when you get into the playoffs and you get eliminated, especially when you get so close. And I guess that's what makes it hard. But when you look back, I mean, just look at some of the memories from this year, and it might be – I think we might wind up looking back and saying this is the most memorable Brewer year possibly of our lives so far, depending on how old you are. But, I mean, look, we saw Yelich hit 2 cycles. We saw him probably wind up winning the MVP. I mean, that's incredible. We saw some amazing performances from Josh Hader. We had 5 All-Stars. We've never had that. It's incredible. We've had, 12 wins in a row. First time since 87. And I really think, even though, hey, yeah, I went and got like $1 hamburger for free. Those are the kind of things that really not only just bring Brewer fans together, but like whole communities together, and they turn maybe non-fans into casual fans and casual fans into diehard fans. Like those are just really great moments. I remember back when I was probably, 9 years old back in '87. And I remember exactly the day that we got free hamburgers. It was incredible. My folks didn't want to wait in line, so they brought McDonald's back and said that Webb's ran out of burgers, so here's McDonald's. And we're like, oh, okay. So we didn't know any better. But, I mean, we won the division. Phenomenal. A game away from the World Series. The only thing that really bothers me is I don't want to sound pessimistic here, but when we say this is the start of something, potentially really good, I worry because unfortunately when you are, I guess, the smallest market in baseball, you don't get to have a dynasty. Like it's as simple as that, unfortunately. I mean, at the end of the day, it's very possible that either the Cubs or Cardinals in the offseason say like, oh, hey, let's go out and get Bryce Harper or somebody like that. And they could just like that piggyback. I mean, the teams with the payroll, they don't necessarily have to rebuild the way that a super small market does. So that certainly worries me a little bit. But overall, I mean, how can you not be, proud to be a Brewer fan and proud of this team?
That, Scott, those are really, really great comments. One thing that gives me a little bit of optimism to your point, and you're right. I mean, the Cardinals and Cubs can both go and sign somebody whenever they want to. But I do think that we have an advantage just because of what Craig said, and that's David Stearns. I do think that he is on the cutting edge as far as GMs go. I think that he's proven that he can turn around a team that, boy, when we hired him in the fall of 2015, the Brewers were at a serious low point. I mean, it had been several years of average baseball followed by a year and a half of really bad baseball. And then David Stearns comes in and really turns this franchise around in a relatively short amount of time. And I think that that does give us the leg up. I mean, the Cubs can have money and they can still spend money foolishly too. And I know that Theo Epstein has done some great things in the game, but, he's also wasted a lot of money on guys like Yu Darvish that David Stearns was not going to bite at for that amount of money. And I don't think it's because the Brewers couldn't sign him. I think it was because David Stearns knew he wasn't going to be worth quite what he got. So I'd like to think that by making smart, pragmatic decisions that David Stearns and company can keep the Brewers window open maybe longer than most fans are expecting. But, we're all blind, I think, to the optimistic side of things just a little bit. But I do tend to think that David Stearns has got to be considered one of the best GMs in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that, although I guess we don't really know. I don't think we know anyway, like how long David Stearns is under contract for, and it just makes me wonder, like, are we going to be able to keep a commodity like him here, and if so, for how long? I mean, we're going to have to pony up a lot of money to keep a really good GM, and I'm not sure that our organization will do that. So it's going to be interesting.
It is, and a lot of money though is relative. I mean, a lot of money for a GM is different than a lot of money for a player too. We gave a guy like Kane as a free agent a $50-some million contract, which is probably worth it. And so we saw Mark Anasio willing to open up his pocketbook for that. I think that to keep a guy like Stearns, and Anasio is a businessman by trade, I think that he understands the value that Stearns brings to the organization. I think he's obviously impressed by the work product on the field. So I would tend to think that it wouldn't be an issue of dollars for a guy like Stearns. But, I guess we've been wrong about things in the past, so who knows. But as of right now, if I'm David Stearns, I'm really in it to win it all in Milwaukee. I think that would be the major career objective and challenge for him. And I would really hate to give that dream up until that occurred. So, if we win a World Series and need a parts, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'll take it. But I just see a guy like Stearns wanting to accept that challenge in a place like Milwaukee. But, again, could be wrong.
I agree with both of your guys' points. I kind of think what Vince is saying, that Stearns will likely see it through, which to me is probably the same window as the Yelich and King contract. So I can really see him stick around for about 4 more years. And that's why I think this incarnation of the Brewers or whatever, obviously there'll be some interchangeable pieces, but that core now of Yelich and Kane and Braun will still be around for a number of those years. Kind of still be our core guys, and that we'll build around. And there'll be young guys coming in. There'll be other vets brought in at deadlines and whatnot. But I do think Stearns will be around at least 3 or 4 years, depending on how things go. But after that, I do see him probably bolting for greener pastures or whatever. Not that the Milwaukee's not green enough. But with that being said, on the flip side of that, Craig Counsell is someone I think that could be the Brewers manager for the next 25 years. I really don't think he's going anywhere because of his ties to Milwaukee. And I think the Brewers will benefit regardless of their GM going forward because of Counsell. Maybe not everyone will agree with me, but I really think he's going to turn himself into a great manager. He's got all those intangible things that great managers usually have. And not only that, he's got experience, as it's good pointed out, throughout the postseason for the on-air announcers that Counsell, his experience winning 2 different world championships with different franchises, not as a Milwaukee Brewer, but those are all valuable things. And I think he's had a pretty nice baseball career that he's now parlayed into a great managing gig. And I think he's just a phenomenal manager. I really expect him to be announced as NL Manager of the Year. And we all know that Chris Yelich will be, even though he hasn't of this taping of this podcast, named the NL MVP. So, looking back again at last offseason, there was a lot of unknowns going on last offseason. The Brewers thought, hey, we're on the cusp of the playoffs. Let's push forward here. Let's end the rebuild. Let's do something. I think David Stearns really did, quote unquote, win last offseason. All his Brewer fans are clamoring for him to get a high-end number 1 starter like Jake Arrieta or Yu Darvish, or at least a consolation prize like, unfortunately, Alex Cobb or someone like that. He didn't do any of that. He went out and signed Yoeli Chacin for a bargain price and a 2-year contract, and he paid off handsomely. And I was wrong about him wholeheartedly. And I will admit also I was very wrong about Wade Miley, who was just off the literally garbage dump, scrap heap, whatever you want to call it, free agent signing, who pitched a couple nice games in spring training, and under the tutelage of our pitching coach, Derek Johnson, somehow had that cutter and found some control and, turned out to be one heck of a pitcher through the entire second half. And really, he's pitching multiple games in each of our postseason series. So it's just unbelievable. Those type of guys that contributed, and we passed on all, and some of our big time pitchers from last year. Jimmy Nelson was our best pitcher in 2017. Didn't even pitch 1 inning or 1 pitch for us this year. Chase Anderson, I think, had a 2.73 ERA last year, and this year he had a 3.93 in much less innings. So he really fell back down to earth. Those were our top 2 pitchers last year. And then our third best pitcher was Kyle Davies, who won 17 games, and he was injured and ineffective when he pitched. So the fact that Counsell and Stearns and our pitching coach Derek Johnson, whoever else brought the best out of these guys, somehow they did it, and our pitching is really what carried us into the playoffs. I think we were 5th in the entire baseball and total team ERA, so it was just phenomenal.
Well, and don't forget, we also had injuries to Brent Suter, other guys in the pen were injured throughout the year. It was pretty amazing what this pitching staff was able to do, and even the guys that were kind of on that rotating plane flight from Colorado Springs to Milwaukee were all able to pitch in. Outside of a couple guys at the beginning of the year, like a Boone Logan or, a few others, we didn't really have anybody who had awful seasons pitching wise. And it was just sort of incredible to watch the staff develop from what every national writer had called a major weakness for the Brewers into what some could even term a strength. I certainly don't think we lost anything because of our pitching this year. And Stearns, I think, pushed the right buttons. We saw that Gio Gonzalez was effective down the stretch after the acquisition of him from the Nationals for the last month of the season. We had Junior Guerra pitched well in spurts. Freddie Peralta had a couple of very nice outings and certainly shows some promise for the future. Brandon Woodruff may have been our best pitcher in the playoffs outside of Josh Hader. And, we just had a lot of guys stepping up. And the other guy who I think is kind of unsung is Corbin Burns. I mean, what a year that guy had coming out of the bullpen in a role that was new to him. Coming up, I think, in June or July, making his major league debut and pitching pretty lights out all season. I mean, outside of a maybe 1 or 2 game hiccup, he was an incredibly solid piece for the Brewers bullpen in a role that he was unaccustomed to. And I know that in the postseason press conference, David Stearns and Craig Counsell mentioned that he will go back to his starting pitching role, which is, I know that we all predicted on our podcast here earlier this season, but boy, did he pitch well out of the pen for the Brewers in 2018. And I think he's kind of the unsung hero of that group. After guys like Josh Hader and Jeremy Jeffers get the credit, and Corey Knebel for the last month, get the credit that they deserve.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things, the Brewers really, especially as they rode their hot streak into the playoffs, there was something about this team and it really clicked, especially in the second half down the stretch there, that there was just some magic about this team. And it's that type of thing that happens to teams that do go deep in the playoffs and make playoff runs all the way to the World Series. Unfortunately, the Brewers fell just 1 game short this year. I feel that magic can definitely return, and hope that it does in the next few years. And we really have just a solid core of guys, like you mentioned, Vince. I think the decision to pitch Woodruff, Burns, and Peralta out of the playoff down the stretch, out of the bullpen, in the second half, down the stretch, in the postseason is going to be invaluable experience for those young guys. And those 3 guys in particular that we did not include any trades for short-term acquisition, I think it was also a very smart move by Stearns and the Brewers organization. And I think that really Burns, Peralta, and Woodruff could really be 3, stalwarts on our rotation going forward, and they're young, controllable at that. So they're definitely going to be valuable pieces. And I think those, adding to the core of our offense, like I mentioned with Yelich, Keane, and Braun still around, I really think that those core 3 young pitchers and those, more veteran and MVP type hitters will kind of be our core going forward. And I think this is going to be a similar formula where we're going to still rely on a really awesome bullpen to follow up with some, overperforming starting pitchers that we're just getting the best out of. And I really think this will be a formula that will work. So real quick, going back on just the season as it progressed. Before the season started, obviously excited about the new Brewer team with Yelich and Kane and all the new pieces and stuff like that. We're a little disappointed, like entering the season, that we didn't get that number 1 type starter, but it turned out not to be necessary. And it was kind of flummoxing to me how we were able to get through a full 163 game season with that starting 5 that we did and get through. But somehow we were able to do it and make the playoffs and make a deep playoff run. And really, to me, the key to the season was that really hot streak that we got in September, at the end of September. Obviously, if you guys, all our fans of our podcast, know that I think going into that last week of the season, I think we had a podcast after our first win of that 3-game series in St. Louis, and we still weren't sure up until that podcast taping whether or not the Brewers were even for sure going to be in the playoffs. And I think after that game, it was clear to us they were going to be, and that happened to be the second win of their 12-game winning streak that included a win in Wrigley. First of all, a sweep of the Reds, a sweep of the Tigers at home to finish up the season. Then the win in Wrigley in game 163 to basically win the NL Central. Awesome. Basically, the Brewers were able to end the Cardinal season and almost in effect ending the Cubs season all in a 7-game stretch and knock them off of the NL Central. That alone is just an awesome accomplishment for this team. And then we went on, of course, to sweep the NLDS over the Rockies in 3 games. And then we won the first game of the NLCS, which gave us the 12-game winning streak, first since '87. Got Milwaukee Brewer fans the Georgia Red Burgers, which, again, is just more of a symbolic thing. That was the first time since Easter Sunday in '87 that was done. And it was awesome to stop by the George Rub and be able to get those burgers. And it's not because of how delicious the burger was, but more of just a symbolic thing that it was a community-based thing that this is something the Brewers rallied to do, and quite an accomplishment at that. And like I said, unfortunately, fell up just short, but it really felt like this team had the magic. And I know that you guys weren't able to make it back to Milwaukee going to playoff games, but I will say that I was able to attend some pretty awesome games during the last month of the season. I will always remember starting back, I was with my young son at the second or the home Yelich cycle game, which was awesome. The very last game of the season, I took my 10-month-old daughter to her very first Brewer game. That was, I think, a 11-0 win, the Brewers over the Tigers, to get us to game 163. And then I was able to attend 2 playoff games. I had tickets to the wild card game and game 5 of the NLDS. Those games never happened, so I got refunded my money by the Milwaukee Brewers ticket office, minus a $3 processing fee for some reason. But anyway,
and thanks to our anonymous source Tom Carter for his help, at least talking to you about your non-refundable $53 ticket.
Yes, thanks for doing that, Tom. And again,
I don't think he
wanted
to
just say TC. Yeah. Just say TC, guys.
Okay, so T. Carter, Tom C. Sorry, Craig. Sorry, Tom.
But I was able to attend the game 1 of the NLDS where the Mike Moustakas walk-off 10th inning. That was an awesome finish, awesome game. And then I was a little bit worried about going into game 6 in the NLCS. The Brewers were down 3-2. Our backs were against the wall, but they did win that game to force a game 7-2. Hayes Aguilar had a big game, and it was pretty awesome atmosphere at Miller Park. And was really confident the Brewers were going to be able to take it home the next day, but it didn't happen. But anyway, so overall, just what a great ending to the season outside of, not making the World Series. But we weren't just knocking on the door of the World Series. We were pounding on the door of the World Series, and it really gives me great hope that the Brewers can get to the World Series during this next 3 or 4 years. Like I said, you don't want to take anything for granted because getting as far as we did has not happened every year. And winning a World Series is even tougher. There's asked the Los Angeles Dodgers losing World Series and whatever. So, I mean, it's tough. It's hard for me to believe if we did make the World Series, we would have got back. We would have actually won the World Series against that great team that was the Boston Red Sox this year. But, I mean, I would have loved the opportunity, and it would have been awesome just to be able to have a World Series game held at Miller Park. But I'm confident it's going to happen. So I don't know what your thoughts are, guys. But that was my kind of wrap-up of the season, I guess.
No, that's really great, Craig. I mean, I think that there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. From my personal perspective, living outside Wisconsin, it was really great. I watched just about every game on TV, either live or from the beginning later on, and it was just awesome. So a lot of excitement. One thing I noticed living away from Wisconsin is how many people were rooting for the Brewers across the country. It was really fun to see that. Some of our longtime listeners may know I live in Washington D.C. and it was definitely the NLCS was definitely a series a lot of people out here were paying attention to, and I would say that the vast majority were cheering on the Brewers. So unless you were from Southern California, it was kind of cool because the Brewers were the talk of the country for a bit, and we're not used to that in October, so that was pretty neat. Over the course of the season, my personal highlight was probably going to all 3 games here in Washington when the Brewers were here. We won 2 or 3 games and just had a lot of fun seeing the guys here in person, and got a chance to go see the Brewers up in Philadelphia when they played the Phillies as well. So it was pretty awesome. Just rooting for this team from afar and trying to get to as many games as I could that were kind of in the area. I got back to Milwaukee just at the beginning of the season for opening day and one other game, but it was just an awesome year, and I think there's a lot of reasons why fans are going to be excited in spring training in 2019.
Yeah, I think I don't know, you guys. This was actually, and I got to say too, I think that when we kind of decided, like, hey, maybe it'd be kind of cool to do this podcast, just for fun, I guess, and gives us an opportunity to obviously reconnect with each other, with Brewer fans, and just kind of talk baseball. It's being transplanted out in Vegas now. You don't really have a lot of opportunities to talk Milwaukee Brewers baseball, and so I think it's been just a phenomenal season for me personally. It's just been absolutely amazing. I actually, of all things, my highlight is probably picking up a lunch order while I was at work, and it was at like a ale house, and went there and picked up my order, and they were talking, and this guy was like, yeah, he goes, hey, can you turn on the Brewers game? The guy's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, wow. He's like, I don't get a lot of that, but yeah, all right. He goes, yeah, well, he goes, I bet on the Brewers just about every game, and they have been under the radar now for 2 years. And because if you bet on the Brewers, you'd make more money than against any other team. And like, it was just so funny just listening to people talking Brewers like out in Vegas. It was just a weird kind of scenario anyway. But I also have to say, Craig, after your comments, just because, potentially George Webb could wind up sponsoring this podcast eventually, I do want to say that, the burgers are actually pretty decent, and you'll have a hard time, finding something comparable in value, because it really is a decent burger. But I also wanted to say, I actually just looked at their website while I was bored, and one of their things has like the GW Webb guy, whatever he is, and it just says like George Webb predicts that Milwaukee will win 12 games in a row. It has that in like a T-shirt form, and I'm like, I really have to get that.
Oh yeah, no, you're a great consumer, Scott, and yeah, I mean, you can't find a better burger at 4:00 in the morning, so that is definitely where you want to go at that time of day, and it's nice to have that option. So.
And Scott, you've never ever led me astray with your food recommendations. So if you say George Webb's burgers are awesome, then I totally wholeheartedly believe your opinion on that. Definitely, you're a solid consumer.
Well, you don't have to take it from me.
Form.
Take it from Mark Antoniak.
Yeah, you got bag of burgers for $5. No, that's awesome.
But no, I want to echo what Scott said too about being able to just talk baseball every week or during the season, and hopefully we'll be able to do it. This off season is going to be a big one throughout baseball, and there'll be plenty to talk about. And again, getting geared up, there'll be plenty of excitement for next year, and definitely fired up about it. But yeah, be able to connect with you guys and our fans. Obviously, it's always a lot of fun, and very appreciative of all of it. And I agree with what Scott also said, that if people during this postseason, I think even non-Brewer fans if they wanted to pick a team to root for, if their team wasn't in it, they were picking the Brewers. I mean, we're underdogs. Sure. We're a small market team. We haven't ever won the World Series, and we've only been there once. And, people like to root for the underdog, and I think we definitely fit. And we also make beer, and people like that as well. So, I mean,
100%, guys, and that was definitely true. Walking around, even just the streets in Washington, I would see Brewers stuff, and it was really cool. I was wearing a Brewers cap. Unfortunately, I missed the part of the NLDS, or the week between the NLDS and the NLCS. I had to take a work trip, and I was in Athens, Greece, and I was walking around literally outside the Parthenon in Athens, and I was wearing my Brewers cap. It was after the meetings were done, and it was just me walking around at night, and a couple said, "Go Brewers," and they saw me walking around in the Parthenon, and I'm like, that was pretty cool, and that's a true story. So very exciting to see the Brewers do well again, and it's nice to be talked about a little bit. I think the next year, one of the challenges for the team is going to be that we're not going to be as under the radar as we were going into this season. So certainly the Cubs were made aware of how good the Brewers can be. So that's going to be a challenge. Certainly the Cardinals are in the same boat, and you can't ever count out the Pirates and even the Reds. So we've got to, continue to make smart decisions, I think, as an organization. But boy, it's really tough when your team loses in the NLCS. That being said, and I think we posted this on social media right after the game. I think that looking back, it's going to be just an incredibly fun season to think about going forward, and hopefully years from now, we're talking about it as the first of many good seasons in a row. So that's my takeaway, I guess, from 2018. I think the further we get removed from the NLCS and losing that series to the Dodgers, I think that the more that'll be clear. It's a special time when you make the playoffs for the fifth time in 48, 49 years of a franchise's history, and it's really exciting when you make an NLCS game, which has only happened 3 times, like 2 in the NL, 1 in the AL for the franchise. So
great point, guys. Yeah. And that'll do it for this episode. We'll see you guys soon.
Go Brewers. Stay classy, Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah, stay classy. Go Brewers. All that.
Go Brewers.